The unthinkable. The phone rang at 2:13 a.m., the shrill sound slicing through the silence of my bedroom. I have always dreaded midnight calls, those heralds of catastrophe too dire to wait for morning. My hand shook as I fumbled for the receiver, my voice barely steady enough to whisper hello. "Mrs. Carver? This is Street Bridget Medical Center. Your son, Michael, has been admitted with what appears to be a ruptured cerebral aneurysm. You should come immediately." The world tilted. At 62, I thought I'd been tempered by loss, widowed for a decade. I had survived the hollow years after my husband's sudden heart attack. But this was different. Nothing in my life had prepared me for the words, "Your only son may not make it through the night." I drove through the quiet streets of Savannah, still in my nightgown, coat thrown over my shoulders, hair uncombed, fingers stiff around the steering wheel. Gaslight flickered on the Spanish moss draped over the live oaks, a ghostly canopy guiding me toward the hospital. When I arrived, a solemn doctor led me into a consultation room whose sterile white walls would forever be etched into my memory. His words fell like stones. Massive aneurysm. No warning signs. Nothing could have been done. He's already gone. Already gone. My brilliant, compassionate Michael gone. My knees buckled, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse onto the cold tile floor. The next hours blurred into a surreal haze of paperwork, hushed condolences from nurses, and decisions no mother should ever have to make. I was still drowning in shock when Sloane finally appeared, Michael's wife of 10 years. She swept into the waiting room clad in a black designer wrap, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, though dawn had barely broken. Her manicured nails tapped impatiently on her phone as she muttered, "Traffic was impossible, and I had to find someone to watch Noah." I had already arranged for Noah, my sweet, sensitive 9-year-old grandson, to stay with his best friend's family. That Sloane hadn't even thought of him was telling, though not surprising. "Michael is gone," I said simply. I searched her face for genuine reaction. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw regret, but it flickered into something I couldn't name: relief? Calculation? Before settling into a carefully rehearsed mask of shock, she murmured lines about not saying goodnight, about how sudden it all was. But her eyes remained dry behind those tinted lenses. And when decisions needed to be made, whether to release Michael's body, how to arrange the funeral, she brushed it all onto me with a casual, "You know him better." Hours later, as I sat numb with grief, Victor Lane, Michael's closest friend since law school and his attorney, arrived. He clasped me in a tight embrace, his voice breaking with genuine sorrow. "I can't believe it, Helena. I just had lunch with him on Monday." But when Victor turned to offer condolences to Sloane, she dipped her head politely, lips set in a flawless but lifeless smile. Then, in a tone almost too smooth, she asked when they might settle things quickly for Noah's sake. Something inside me twisted. Noah had just lost his father. My grandson needed comfort, stability, truth. Instead, I watched his mother adjust her hair in a reflection and make furtive phone calls in hushed tones. There was no grief etched in her face, only calculation, as though she were already planning her next move in some private chess game. That night, back in my empty home, I clutched a photograph of Michael as a child, his gap-toothed grin forever frozen in innocence. I whispered to myself, I must be strong for Noah. I didn't yet know the scope of what Michael had foreseen, the safeguards he'd quietly put in place. All I knew was that my grandson had lost his father, and something about Sloane's icy detachment had ignited every protective instinct in me. A midnight call had shattered my world, but deep down, I sensed that the true battle was only beginning. Something about Sloane's reaction was wrong. What secrets had Michael uncovered before his death? And what measures had he taken to shield us from the woman he no longer trusted? Tell me in the comments what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to follow how this story unfolds. I have attended enough funerals in my 62 years to know what grief looks like. It comes in many forms: collapsed silence, furious tears, or that eerie numbness where pain has hollowed a person out completely. But real grief always has a texture, a weight, something that cannot be faked. At Michael's funeral, I saw no such authenticity in Sloane. The service was held beneath the great oaks of Bonaventure Cemetery, where the wind carried the faint brine of the Savannah River. Michael lay in a polished mahogany casket adorned with white lilies, his favorite. I sat in the front pew, Noah tucked close against me, his small body trembling with sobs that racked his shoulders. My grandson's grief was raw, unvarnished. I held him tightly, whispering small comforts as his tears soaked my sleeve. On my other side, Sloane performed. She wore a black silk dress that seemed designed more for a magazine spread than mourning, her makeup flawless, waterproof mascara dabbed with a monogrammed handkerchief that never grew damp. She leaned against me at carefully measured intervals, murmuring lines like, "He would have loved this turnout," and Michael spoke so highly of them all. To the mourners, we must have looked like two women united in grief, the widow and the mother. But I felt how lightly she rested on my shoulder, how quickly she straightened whenever someone of importance approached. I watched her eyes scan the crowd, assessing status, wealth, connections. She was less a grieving wife than a hostess at a society gala. Meanwhile, story after story came from Michael's friends, colleagues, and clients. One woman clasped my hands, whispering, "Your son reduced his fees when he learned I couldn't afford my divorce. He saved my house. He saved me." Another, an elderly man with trembling hands, said, "He was the only attorney who listened. He cared about justice, not billable hours." Each memory was a bittersweet gift. They painted a portrait of the man my son had become: principled, compassionate, quietly heroic. I tucked their words into my heart, knowing one day Noah would need them like stepping stones across the river of his loss. But even as I absorbed these tributes, I could not shake my attention from Sloane. I noticed the subtle shift in her voice when she spoke to Michael's wealthy clients versus his childhood friends. I noticed how, during the reception, she slipped away to have intense, whispered conversations with a tall man in an expensively cut suit. When I approached, she quickly introduced him with calculated casualness. "Helena, this is Damon Royce, one of Michael's real estate partners." His handshake was brisk, his condolences perfunctory. But when Sloane's manicured fingers brushed his arm, the gesture was too familiar, too intimate for mere business. I filed it away. My academic training in psychology meant I had spent decades studying human behavior. Even in grief, I could not stop observing, cataloging, connecting dots. As dusk fell and exhaustion weighed on me, Noah curled up on a velvet settee in the funeral home's side parlor, finally succumbing to sleep. His tear-stained face pressed into my lapel, his small hand clutching mine even in dreams. That was when Victor Lane approached me quietly, his eyes red-rimmed but his voice steady. "Helena, we need to speak soon. There are provisions in Michael's will that require immediate attention. He made changes recently. He wanted you to be aware." A chill swept through me. I looked down at my grandson, asleep in my arms. Changes? Before I could ask more, Sloane appeared at Victor's elbow, her tone syrupy but her gaze sharp. "Tomorrow would be best. The sooner we resolve things, the better for Noah." Her words curdled inside me. This was not about Noah. Not for her. That night, after carrying my sleeping grandson home, I watched Sloane glide past the mourners, her mask firmly in place, her hand brushing Damon's arm one last time before disappearing into the Savannah night. And I knew with cold certainty the funeral was only the stage. The real performance, the battle for my grandson's future, was just beginning. The day after the funeral, I found myself seated in Victor Lane's law office, a stately brick building off Chippewa Square. The familiar scent of old leather and polished mahogany clung to the air, a place where Michael had once spent so many hours working beside his closest friend. Victor looked drawn, the grief heavy in his eyes, Yet his professionalism never faltered. Across from us sat Sloane, her face pale and perfectly composed, a pair of pearl earrings gleaming against her dark hair. She crossed her legs with studied grace, one manicured hand tapping an impatient rhythm against the armrest. Victor cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he began to read. Michael updated his will 3 months ago. My pulse quickened. 3 months ago? Victor continued, his voice measured. To his wife, Sloane Avery Carver. He leaves the Tybee Island cottage, his investment portfolio with Harborcrest Capital, and a life insurance policy valued at $500,000. Sloane's lips curved slightly smug satisfaction. But it faltered almost instantly as Victor went on. To his mother, Helena Carver, he bequeaths the family home on Forsyth Street, both personal vehicles and his private accounts at Savannah First National. My heart lurched. The home where Michael and Noah had lived, the home filled with memories of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and the treehouse Michael built for Noah in the backyard, that house was left to me, not Sloane. Sloane's mask cracked. That can't be right. We purchased the house together. It's marital property. Victor calmly slid a folder across the desk. Number Michael bought the house in his name 2 years before your marriage. It was never converted to joint ownership. The deed and mortgage are solely his. Her hands tightened on the leather armrests, the faintest tremor in her fingers. Victor pressed on. Regarding Noah's future, Michael established an education trust. Helena, you are named sole trustee. All funds related to Noah's care and schooling fall under your oversight. The silence in the room was electric. I felt the weight of it settling over me, both the honor and the burden of my son's foresight. Sloane's voice sharpened, nearly a hiss. Michael and I discussed our estate plans extensively. This isn't what we agreed. Victor's tone remained steady. Michael executed this will legally and with full capacity. He came to me personally. The changes were deliberate. My mind reeled. Why had he done this in secret? What had he seen? Then Victor's gaze met mine. There's one more matter. Michael left a sealed envelope for you, Helena. His instructions were clear. It was to be delivered privately, outside of this meeting. He placed it gently into my trembling hands. My name, written in Michael's careful handwriting, stared back at me. The sight of those letters, so familiar from birthday cards, from little notes left on my kitchen counter, made my eyes sting with fresh tears. Sloane leaned forward, her tone smooth but edged with steel. Helena, you know Michael would never want Noah uprooted from his home. You already have your own house. Surely you're not going to take this one away from his son. Her manipulation was masterful, framing my son's legal wishes as cruelty toward my grandson. But I knew better. Michael had done this for a reason. I need time, I said softly, closing my fingers around the envelope. As we left, I caught Sloane in the lobby, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice lowered but furious. He blindsided me. The house, the cars, even Noah's fund, it's all under her control. No, he didn't suspect. It must have been his mother's influence. I'll fight this, Damon. I deserve more. I didn't move. I didn't let her see me, but my heart pounded. She hadn't even left the building before plotting her counterattack. That evening, alone in my quiet house, I placed the envelope on the table. My hand hovered, shaking, over the seal. What had Michael discovered? What had he feared? And why had he entrusted me, his aging mother, with the future of his only child? I stared at the envelope for hours before I finally opened it. My hands trembled, the paper tearing with a soft rip that seemed louder than thunder in my silent kitchen. Inside was a single page of Michael's stationery from Lane and Morell. His familiar handwriting leapt out at me, sharp, deliberate, each word etched with urgency. Mom, if you're reading this, the worst has happened. I'm so sorry to leave you with this burden, but there's no one else I trust. My chest ached as I read his words, my tears blurring the ink. My marriage has been failing for some time. What began as distance has turned into something darker. I've discovered things about Sloane. Things that make me fear for Noah's well-being and for you. I've put safeguards in place. The house, the vehicles, the accounts, they're not for you alone. They're meant as tools to keep Noah safe, to make sure he has one parent figure who will put him first. Sloane will fight this. She'll manipulate, threaten, and perform. Do not let her know what you know. Document everything. Trust Victor, and when the time comes, protect Noah. I love you, Mom. Always. Signed simply, Michael. I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing until my throat was raw. Even facing the possibility of his own death, my son had been thinking ahead, thinking of us. But there was something else in the envelope, tucked behind the letter. A small brass key with the number 127 etched into it. A safe deposit box key. No bank name, no explanation. Just a clue Michael had left behind, one that whispered of further secrets. The enormity of what he had done, and what he was asking of me settled heavily on my shoulders. At 62, I had thought my battles were behind me. I had buried a husband, retired from academia, and looked forward to quiet evenings reading novels on my porch. But Michael was asking me to become a protector, a strategist, a warrior. I thought of Noah, his sweet brown eyes red from crying at the funeral, his small hand clinging to mine. He had lost his father. He could not afford to lose a stable home as well. When I finally fell asleep in my armchair, the letter still clutched to my chest, I dreamed of Michael as a boy 8 years old, Noah's age-building forts in the backyard, declaring that he would always protect me. Now it was my turn to protect his son. The next morning, I called Victor. My voice was steady, though inside I was shaking. I've read Michael's letter. He anticipated all of this. He left a key. I don't know what it's for. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Victor said, Helena, I think I do. Don't go to the bank alone. We'll go together. As I hung up, I felt the first glimmer of something stronger than grief. Resolve. For Noah's sake, I would become whatever I needed to be. 2 days after the funeral, Sloane appeared at the Forsyth Street house unannounced. I was in the kitchen, helping Noah with his spelling words, when the front door opened and her heels clicked against the hardwood floor like gunshots. Helena? She called, her voice syrupy sweet. We need to talk. She entered the kitchen with a faint smile, carrying 2 lattes from a cafe downtown. She handed one to me as though we were girlfriends instead of uneasy adversaries, then sat at the island with a theatrical sigh. This house is too much for you, she began without preamble. So many memories, so much upkeep. It's overwhelming for me, and I'm 35. I can't imagine how exhausting it will be for you. I felt Noah stiffen beside me, his pencil pausing mid-word. He looked at me anxiously. I smoothed his hair, forcing a calm smile. Why don't you finish the last word at the table, sweetheart? I'll be right here. When he moved out of earshot, Sloane leaned forward, her manicured fingers tightening around her coffee cup. I found a condo on the riverfront, modern, secure, steps from the cultural district. Noah would thrive there. The only problem is the will. Michael made a mistake, Helena. He wasn't himself. We need to fix it. Her gaze bored into mine. Transfer the house to me. It's what Michael would have wanted, for Noah to stay with his mother in his own home. You already have your place. This is ours. Her voice quivered at the edges of the word ours, the mask slipping for a fraction of a second before snapping back into place. I tilted my head, feigning hesitation. That's a lot to consider, Sloane. These decisions shouldn't be rushed. Michael only updated the will 3 months ago. Surely he had reasons. Her smile froze, but her eyes hardened. He was under tremendous stress. You know how work consumed him. He wasn't thinking clearly. That's why I'm asking you, as Noah's mother, to do the right thing. The right thing. How easily those words rolled off her tongue, coated in honey, dripping poison. I'll think about it, I said gently. Sipping the latte I had no intention of drinking. But perhaps we should give Noah time before making major changes. Relief flickered in her expression, the faintest glimmer that she believed she had me halfway convinced. Of course. Just don't wait too long. Children need stability. If the condo goes off the market, I'd hate for Noah to lose such an opportunity. Artificial urgency, straight from a negotiation playbook. After she left, Noah came back into the kitchen, his face pale. "Grandma, are we moving?" I knelt, holding his hands. "Not unless you want to, sweetheart. You're safe here." His shoulders relaxed as he whispered, "I don't want to leave. Dad built my treehouse." Later that evening, I walked across the street to visit Judge Emmett Whitlow, retired from the bench but sharp as ever. He had been a quiet presence at Michael's funeral, his weathered face lined with sympathy. When I explained Sloane's proposal, his expression darkened. "Helena, grief makes people reveal themselves," he said gravely. "Document everything. Dates, times, words. Use neutral language, no accusations. If this goes to court, facts matter more than feelings." I nodded. I had taught human behavior for 30 years. I knew performance when I saw it. Sloane was playing a role, and she thought I was too old, too broken by grief to resist her script. But she had underestimated me. That night, I began a journal. Every detail went into it. Sloane's latte visit, her phrasing, Noah's reaction, even the time she arrived and the color of her dress. Facts, not feelings. It was the first entry in what I suspected would become a long record of battles yet to come. It was Noah who told me first. We were sitting on the porch swing one Thursday evening, the cicadas humming in the magnolia trees, when he blurted it out. "Grandma, Mom says we're going to Palm Beach this weekend. With her friend Damon. He has a boat." The words were casual, but his eyes betrayed unease. He twisted the hem of his t-shirt, a habit I'd noticed whenever he was nervous. I forced my voice to remain calm. "Palm Beach? That sounds sudden. Did your mom tell you when you're leaving?" He shook his head. "She just said pack shorts. But I have a science project due Monday. Dad always helped me with projects. I don't want to miss it." His little voice broke, and the sound splintered my heart. I stroked his hair, steadying my tone. "Your project matters, sweetheart. Let me talk to your mom." But when I called Sloane that night, she brushed me off with breezy assurance. "Noah needs new experiences, Helena. He's been through so much. A boat trip will be therapeutic. Besides, Damon has friends in Palm Beach with connections good for all of us. Don't worry about some little project. Teachers understand grief." My stomach nodded. Grief, for her, had become a shield she wielded whenever convenient. For Noah, it was an open wound. The next morning, I arranged for a security system to be installed at the Forsyth house cameras in the common areas, motion alerts routed directly to my phone. Victor had insisted, and now I understood why. That weekend, while Noah was gone, I could not rest. I paced the quiet house, clutching Michael's letter like a talisman. I imagined my grandson in a strange hotel room, seasick on some stranger's yacht, wishing he were home building his solar system model. When Sloane finally returned late Sunday evening, she swept into the house with the scent of expensive perfume and ocean air clinging to her clothes. "He had a wonderful time," she declared, though Noah trudged behind her, shoulders slumped, face pale. His arms were bare, his skin pinked with sunburn. "How was it, sweetheart?" I asked gently, kneeling to meet his eyes. He shrugged, eyes downcast. "The boat made me sick, and I lost my backpack. My project stuff was in it." Before I could respond, Sloane cut in sharply. "He's exaggerating. Just a little seasickness. Honestly, Helena, he'll survive. Children bounce back. The resort was 5-star. Damon was incredibly generous." Her tone was sharp, defensive, almost as if she knew Noah's words had betrayed more truth than her polished summary. When she left moments later, Claiming an urgent meeting, I carried Noah upstairs. He clutched his stuffed dinosaur as though it were a lifeline. "Mom and Damon went out at night," he whispered, voice trembling. "They left me with a babysitter. I woke up and didn't know where I was. I was scared." I swallowed my fury, forcing calm. "That must have been frightening, but you're safe now, Noah. You're home." After I tucked him into bed, I sat at my desk and opened my journal. Every detail went in: the trip, the sunburn, the lost backpack, Noah's whispered confession. I also slipped the receipt I found sticking out of his duffel bag between the pages, a spa charge from Palm Beach, signed not by Sloane but by Damon Royce. Later that night, Victor called with news. "Helena, I've been looking into Damon. Royce Urban Works is courting overseas investors for a waterfront redevelopment project here in Savannah." Michael suspected something shady. It might connect to why he changed his will. As I listened, I realized this wasn't just about inheritance or even custody. Damon's shadow stretched further than I'd imagined, and Sloane was standing squarely in it, dragging Noah along with her. The Palm Beach trip was only the beginning. On Monday morning, while Noah sat at the kitchen table trying to salvage his half-ruined science project, Victor arrived with a heavy manila envelope. He set it on the counter between us like a bomb. "These were among Michael's private files," he said quietly. "He must have intended them for you if anything ever happened." With trembling hands, I pulled out the contents: printed text messages, private investigators' photos, receipts, even fragments of financial records. The messages were damning, months of exchanges between Sloane and Damon, full of coded affection and sharp complaints. "I can't stand another night with him. Be patient. Once the accounts are in order, we'll be free. Noah complicates things." The words made my stomach twist. My grandson reduced to an inconvenience in his mother's secret conversations. The photographs told their own story: Sloane and Damon slipping into a boutique hotel, her hand grazing his back in the unmistakable intimacy of lovers. Expense reports showed gifts Damon purchased: jewelry, flights, lavish dinners. And then, buried deeper, a background dossier on Damon himself: shell companies, questionable zoning practices, and rumored ties to offshore accounts. I forced myself to look at each page, to absorb the ugly truth that my son had discovered and tried to protect us from. Then, tucked at the very bottom of the envelope, was something that chilled me: a safe deposit record. Box Hasson 27, held at Harbor Federal, opened under Michael's name. The brass key he had left me suddenly had its match. Victor leaned forward. "Helena, the box likely contains what Michael couldn't risk keeping at home, but we'll need to approach it carefully. If Damon suspects, I'll go with you." I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Not alone, never alone. That evening, after Noah was asleep, I sat at the dining room table with my journal open. The pages were already filling Sloane's latte visit, her condo pitch, the Palm Beach debacle. Now I added the texts, the photographs, the receipts. I described Noah's pale face, his frightened whispers about being left with a stranger in the hotel. I wrote without emotion, just as Judge Whitlow had advised. Date, time, observation. Facts, not feelings. But inside, I seethed with anger so sharp it felt like fire under my skin. I thought of Michael's letter document everything my son had known. He had seen the danger growing and built this quiet fortress of evidence to shield his boy. As I closed the journal, I whispered into the silent room, "I see it now, Michael. I see it all, and I'll finish what you started." The invitation came wrapped in silk. Sloane called one afternoon, her tone dripping with manufactured warmth. "Helena, let me take you to dinner. Just the two of us. We need to find common ground." I hesitated, but curiosity pulled me forward. If she wanted to show her hand, I would be there to see it. That evening, I met her at a restaurant on Jones Street, one of those minimalist places where the portions are tiny and the wine list longer than the menu. Sloane looked immaculate in a black sheath dress, a string of pearls at her throat. She ordered champagne before I could even sit down. "To new beginnings," she toasted, raising her glass with a practiced smile. I sipped politely, waiting. She leaned across the table, lowering her voice to that intimate register she used when she wanted to sound sincere. "Helena, the will has created complications, awkwardness. Michael wasn't himself when he made those changes. Stress, medication. He wasn't thinking clearly about what our family needed." I kept my face neutral, letting her speak. "I've spoken with an estate attorney," she continued smoothly. "He says we could contest the will, argue diminished capacity. But litigation is messy. It drags on for years. That's not good for Noah." Her eyes gleamed as she slid a folded document across the table. "So I have a better solution. Clean, simple. You transfer the house and vehicles to me. In exchange, I guarantee you visitation with Noah. Weekends, holidays, we'll even put it in writing. Everyone wins." I stared at the paper, her words ringing in my ears. She was bargaining my grandson as if he were a pawn. "That's generous," I murmured, my voice carefully steady. "Most mothers wouldn't offer such concessions." She mistook my restraint for hesitation. "Exactly. I value your role in Noah's life. But I need control, Helena. I can't raise him while you hold the house and accounts over me. This way, we both get what we want." I folded the paper without reading further, slipping it into my purse. "I'll need time to review, and Victor should look at it." Her smile faltered. "I wouldn't involve Victor. He's old-fashioned. My attorney assures me this is standard." I nodded, as if persuaded. "Of course. But Michael always taught me never to sign anything without review. Surely you can respect that." Her eyes flickered with irritation before her mask reassembled. "Fine. But don't delay. I'm considering a fresh start in Santa Fe. Better schools, new opportunities. If I move, visitation becomes more complicated." There it was, the threat hidden in sweet words. As we left, her heels clicking against the cobblestones, she leaned closer and whispered, "Think carefully, Helena. Fighting me only hurts Noah." I smiled thinly. "I'll keep that in mind." Later that night, in Victor's office, I laid the document on his desk. He skimmed it, his expression hardening. "She's offering you visitation rights you already have. This is coercion, plain and simple, and she's tipped her hand about relocation. Santa Fe now, maybe farther later." His eyes met mine, steady and grave. "Helena, it's time. Michael's contingency plan wasn't just theoretical. We may have to use it." I thought of Noah's tear-streaked face, his whispered fears after Palm Beach, his small shoulders carrying grief too heavy for a child. "Then let's use it," I said firmly. Victor didn't waste time. The morning after Sloane's devil's bargain, he summoned me back to his office. His desk was covered in neatly stacked files, color-coded tabs jutting out like flags. He poured me a cup of coffee, then slid a single folder toward me. "This is what Michael prepared," he said gravely. He called it his emergency protocol. Inside was a petition for temporary guardianship of Noah Carver. My pulse pounded as I read the words. Guardianship. Me. Victor's voice was low but steady. Michael anticipated this very scenario. He told me, if Sloane's actions jeopardized Noah's stability emotionally, medically, academically, he wanted you to have the option to step in. He left instructions, evidence, even recommendations for experts. I shook my head, overwhelmed. "Victor, I'm 62. Would a judge really consider me over Noah's mother?" He leaned forward. "Helena, you've been his constant. You attend school meetings, manage his medication, cook his meals. Courts look at patterns, not appearances. Sloane is creating a record of inconsistency, missed conferences, forgotten inhalers, absences, And now this relocation threat? Judges hate flight risks. He opened another folder. We already have corroboration. Noah's teacher documented missed assignments and anxiety spikes. The school nurse logged his recent asthma incident when Sloan forgot to refill the prescription. And I've scheduled an evaluation with Dr. Priya Kapoor, a child psychologist the court recognizes as neutral. She'll meet Noah at school tomorrow. That report will carry weight. I pressed a hand to my temple. This feels like war. It is, Victor said simply. But Michael left you the weapons, his letter, his journals, the evidence he collected, and your own careful documentation. Together it tells a powerful story. That night, after Noah was asleep, I reread Michael's words. Document everything, trust Victor, protect Noah. So I did. I recorded every detail from the past week, Noah's pale face after Palm Beach, the missing backpack, Sloan's attempt to barter my grandson for property, her veiled threats about Santa Fe. Facts, not feelings. 2 days later, Victor called. His voice carried both urgency and reassurance. Dr. Kapoor completed her preliminary assessment. Noah expressed high anxiety about moving, but strong attachment to you. He described his mother as distracted and said he feels safest in your care. I closed my eyes, both heartbroken and relieved. Helena, Victor continued, I'm filing the emergency petition tomorrow. Judge Carlton has a reputation for acting swiftly in child welfare cases. We'll know within 48 hours. I stared across the room at Noah's backpack, propped against the wall. His science project, pieced together after Palm Beach, sat proudly on the kitchen counter, a little crooked but entirely his. Michael had been right. This wasn't about houses or accounts. It was about one boy who deserved a chance to grieve with dignity, to grow up safe, to remember his father not with fear but with love. And if Sloan wanted a war, she would have one. But it would not be on her terms. The courthouse smelled faintly of lemon polish and nerves. My hands shook as I smoothed the navy blazer Victor had insisted I wear. Conservative? Reliable? No, nonsense. Beside me, he carried a slim folder, his expression calm but taut, like a chess master stepping into a high-stakes match. Across the aisle, Sloan sat with her attorney Gerald Winters, a sharp-featured man from one of Savannah's most aggressive family law firms. Sloan looked transformed, hair pulled back, makeup soft, a black dress modest enough to suggest piety. She'd even placed a framed photo of Michael and Noah in front of her, a prop in her carefully choreographed performance. But when her eyes met mine, the mask cracked just enough for me to see the venom beneath. Judge Marisol Carlton entered promptly at 9. Stern, silver-haired, and with the kind of presence that silences a room, she wasted no time. This is an emergency custody hearing regarding minor child Noah Carver. I've reviewed the preliminary petition. Mr. Lane, you may proceed. Victor rose, his voice steady. He outlined the pattern. Missed school conferences, forgotten medication, Noah's anxiety documented by his teacher and counselor, the Palm Beach trip where he was left with hotel staff while his mother spent nights out. He placed the damning agreement Sloan had offered me on the judge's bench, highlighting her attempt to barter visitation for assets. Your Honor, he concluded, we're not asking to strip Miss Avery of her rights as a mother. We are asking for temporary guardianship with Mrs. Carver, who has provided stability and care. This is about Noah's best interests during an exceptionally vulnerable time. Then Winters rose. His words were knives wrapped in silk. He painted me as a meddling, grief-addled mother-in-law, obsessed with control, manipulating my grandson to turn against his mother. He pointed to my meticulous journal, calling it fixated surveillance. He argued that Sloan was a devoted mother temporarily overwhelmed by tragedy. Finally, Judge Carlton turned to me. Mrs. Carver, you may speak. I stood, my knees threatening to buckle, but my voice, thank God, held steady. Your Honor, I am not here to replace Noah's mother. I am here because my grandson has lost his father, and he needs stability. He needs his medication on time, someone at his school conferences, someone who won't put him on a boat when he's terrified of the water. I am here because Michael asked me to protect his son when he no longer could. For a long, silent moment, the judge studied me over the rim of her glasses. Then she nodded and leaned back. I've heard enough. I'll review the evidence in chambers. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. The wait was excruciating. Sloane and Winters whispered furiously at one end of the hallway, her manicured hand slicing the air with every gesture. Victor and I sat quietly at the other end, the silence heavy, my stomach twisted in knots. At last, the bailiff called us back. Judge Carlton's face revealed nothing as she read her ruling. Having reviewed the evidence, I find sufficient cause for emergency intervention. Temporary guardianship of minor child Noah Carver is hereby granted to Helena Carver for a period of 60 days. Miss Avery will have supervised visitation 3 times weekly. Neither party may remove the child from this jurisdiction. A comprehensive family assessment will be conducted immediately. The gavel cracked against the wood. Decision made. Across the courtroom, Sloane's face contorted with rage, her polished facade shattering. She leaned toward me, whispering through clenched teeth. This isn't over. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Victor stepped smoothly between us, his voice cool. Miss Avery, all communication now goes through counsel. As she was led out by her attorney, fury written in every line of her body, I realized what had just happened. The court had validated Michael's fears. His son was protected for now. And I, at 62, had just become my grandson's guardian. The ruling changed everything. But it didn't end the war. At first, Sloane complied with the supervised visits, though she treated them like obligations. She'd arrive late, often in designer athleisure, scrolling through her phone while Noah sat stiffly across from her. Sometimes she'd bring gifts, expensive sneakers, a video game console as if she could purchase affection. Other times, she'd pepper him with questions that sounded rehearsed. Are you happy here? Do you miss me when you're at Grandma's? Don't you wish things were back to normal? The supervisors noted her inconsistency. But to Noah, the message was clear. His grief was an inconvenience to be managed. Then she began canceling visits. First once, then twice. Work emergencies, she claimed. Each time, Noah's disappointment carved into me. He'd sit by the window, waiting until the appointed hour passed, and he whispered, "She's not coming, is she?" I would gather him close, swallowing my own anger. "No, sweetheart, not tonight, but I'm here." Meanwhile, Victor's investigation deepened. He discovered that Damon Royce had quietly placed deposits on properties in Bali, not Santa Fe as Sloane had hinted. Shell companies tied to Royce Urban Works were funneling money offshore. If Sloane regained custody, she could vanish with Noah halfway across the world, beyond the reach of our courts. The possibility kept me awake at night. Then came her text. "We need to talk privately. No lawyers. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Riverside Park. Come alone or the deal's off." I showed it to Victor immediately. His jaw tightened. Classic end run. Around legal channels. Dangerous. "I have to go," I said. "If she's planning something, I need to hear it." "Not alone," he replied firmly. "I'll be nearby, and you'll record the conversation. Georgia's a one-party consent state. If she incriminates herself, we'll have it." The next afternoon, the park was nearly deserted. Mothers with strollers lingered near the playground. A jogger loped past. Sloane sat on a bench overlooking the river, oversized sunglasses masking her eyes, posture rigid. "You came," she said coolly as I approached. "I wasn't sure you had the nerve." I sat, leaving a deliberate gap between us. "I'll always show up for Noah." She removed her sunglasses, and for the first time, I saw the fatigue etched into her features. "This custody fight is killing me. The scrutiny, the lawyers, the reports. It has to end. Then end it, I said softly. Put Noah first. Her laugh was brittle. Don't play saint, Helena. We both know what this is about: control. You want my son. You want Michael's house. Fine. Keep them. I froze. What are you saying? I'm leaving Savannah, she said bluntly. Damon and I have opportunities overseas. Noah doesn't fit into that life. He needs stability. You provide it. I'll sign over custody. Clean break. But in exchange, you stop digging into my affairs. No more investigators, no more court battles. I get my freedom. You get Noah. Her words hit like a thunderclap. You just walk away from your son? My voice trembled with disbelief. I prefer to think of it as the mature choice, she said with a shrug. You want him. I want out. Everyone wins. I stared at her, scarcely able to breathe. She was offering me the very thing Michael had prepared me for: custody of Noah, but at a cost that revealed her true self. Behind us, the river rolled on, indifferent and eternal. I slipped my hand into my pocket, feeling the recorder humming faintly, capturing every poisonous word. For the first time, I realized Michael had known her completely, and he had known me. He had trusted that, when the moment came, I would do what he no longer could. The following week felt surreal, as though I were moving through a dream I hadn't dared imagine. Sloane had kept her word. Her attorney delivered a custody agreement so stark it took Victor's breath away. It granted me full legal guardianship of Noah, while she retained nothing more than the option of occasional visitation at my discretion. Support payments would continue, but her involvement otherwise would vanish like mist on the river. She's surrendering, Victor said, scanning the pages. I never thought I'd see it, but here it is in black and white. Clean break, just as she promised. I sat across from him, the document trembling in my hands. She really means to leave him? Victor's expression was grim. Helena, she's already gone. Mentally, emotionally, Noah hasn't been her priority for a long time. This only makes it official. Still, I couldn't stop the ache in my chest. My grandson was being abandoned twice over, once by death, once by choice. How could a mother so easily sever herself from her child? The court hearing was brief. Judge Carlton looked over the voluntary relinquishment with narrowed eyes. This is unusual, she said, but given Miss Avery's consent and the evidence already presented, I see no reason to contest. Guardianship is hereby granted to Mrs. Helena Carver. Her gavel fell, sealing what Michael had set in motion months before. I walked out of the courthouse into the pale Savannah sunlight, the paper in my hand heavier than stone. It was official. I was no longer simply Noah's grandmother. I was, in every practical and legal sense, his parent. That evening, after Noah was asleep, Victor arrived with a small fireproof box. This came from Harbor Federal, he said, Michael's safe deposit. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a thumb drive, a stack of documents, and a single flash recorder. I pressed play. Michael's voice, warm and steady, filled the room. Mom, if you're hearing this, it means Sloane has shown her hand. The drive contains Damon's shell companies, maps of the rezoning plans, records of Sloane's financial dealings. Victor knows how to handle it. Don't try to confront her, just protect Noah. That's all that matters. Protect him. I wept as I clutched the recorder to my chest. My son had thought of everything, even from beyond the grave. Weeks later, the fallout began to ripple through Savannah. Damon Royce's redevelopment project stalled amid whispers of corruption. Quiet inquiries were made, and then he was simply gone, vanished overseas with Sloane in tow. Whether they found their fresh start in Bali or somewhere else, I didn't know. What I did know was that they left Noah behind, their absence as deliberate as it was final. And so, at 62, I became not just the keeper of my grandson's memories, but the architect of his future. 3 years later, the house on Forsyth Street no longer echoed with grief, it pulsed with life again. Noah was 12 now, lanky and bright-eyed, his voice starting to change, but his laughter still the same sweet sound. He burst through the door one afternoon, tossing his backpack onto the rug. "Grandma, guess what? I got the lead in our town. I'm playing George Gibbs." His excitement was contagious. I smiled, remembering the program tucked away in an old box upstairs. "Did you know your father played the same role when he was your age?" He practiced his lines right in this living room. Noah's grin widened, his eyes sparkling. "Really? That's so cool." Miss Larson said I reminded her of Dad when I auditioned. Later that evening, while he spread his script across the dining table, he asked quietly, "Should we tell Mom about the play?" The question was not a surprise. Every so often, he would circle back to her, testing the waters of hope. Sloane's promised calls had dwindled after she left with Damon. First to rare birthdays, then to silence. The support check still arrived, signed by her attorney, but they carried no notes, no warmth. I chose my words carefully. "It's up to you, sweetheart. We can send her the dates if you'd like." He hesitated, then shook his head. "Number she didn't answer when I emailed about the science fair. She probably wouldn't come." There was no bitterness in his voice, just acceptance. The ache of abandonment had dulled into scar tissue, something he carried but no longer let define him. In those years, we had built our own constellation of support. The Wilsons next door had become family. Judge Whitlow still dropped by with his wry humor and garden tomatoes. Victor had transitioned from Michael's attorney to something more like an uncle, and I had found my own unexpected renewal art classes at the community center. Watercolor landscapes scattered across the sunroom. On Noah's 12th birthday, we planted a jasmine vine by the porch, its sweet fragrance perfuming the summer nights. "For Dad," Noah said, patting the soil. "So it'll always smell like him when the wind blows." That evening, after the guests left and the house quieted, I opened the last letter from Michael, tucked away in the safe deposit box and marked, "Read when resolved." "Mom, if you're holding this, it means you did it. You protected Noah when I couldn't. I know the burden was heavy, and I'm sorry. But I trusted you because you taught me to see people clearly. You saw Sloane for who she was before I did. Please tell Noah stories about me, the good ones, and the mistakes too. Let him know I tried. Let him know he was always my first thought. I love you both beyond words." I pressed the letter to my heart, tears slipping down my cheeks. Outside, the jasmine swayed in the evening breeze, its fragrance mingling with the laughter of a boy upstairs practicing his lines. Michael had been right. Love, vigilance, and truth had carried us through. Sloane had chosen her freedom over her son, but in doing so, she gave me the chance to raise Noah with the steadiness he deserved. It wasn't the family any of us imagined, but it was ours, hard-won, imperfect, and precious beyond measure.